So let's get started. I'm going to be using a PowerPoint most of the time. That means that you need to see it and not me. So I'm about to disappear into a little corner of the picture, down there somewhere. I'll try to pop up again once or twice so you know that I'm still there. But okay, there I go. Let's start by figuring out what we mean by communication and recognizing some of its limits. I'm trying to communicate with you now, and unless you're distracted by something more important, eating your lunch perhaps, or a work deadline that you're facing, I may actually be reaching you. We're going to call this group communication. We have a group of participants, and we have a shared purpose, learning about C4D. Of course, you might pay more attention to me if I was physically in the room with you, but there's one advantage to internet and to video. I'm not going away. You can replay me, you can pause to think or discuss, you can rewind me if you didn't catch something, and yes, you can also erase me. Much of the communication we do every day is what we call interpersonal, with another person. It's face-to-face, in writing, by phone, or by email, or in social media. We do the group communication in meetings, emails, video conferences, also social media. And then there's mass communication. That's what happens when you launch an advertising or a PR campaign, or you're interviewed on TV about your research, or when your scientific study is widely reported, maybe even goes viral on the internet. In interpersonal and group communication, you have some control over who receives your message and how they respond to it. In mass communication, even though you're trying to reach specific groups, for example, people who need vaccines, it's much more difficult to predict who's watching, who's listening, who's reading, and how they will react to the message. Although there are differences between the three types of communication, interpersonal communication, group communication, and mass communication, when we think about C4D, we need to consider all three of them. For disease prevention efforts, for example, we should not just be thinking about campaigns with booklets, posters, t-shirts, radio and television spots. In every community, in every segment of society, we need to find out which communication channels work best and which are most cost-effective. We also need to recognize that people go to different sources for information, especially health information. In some societies, it may be family members, especially mothers and grandmothers. It could be local tribal or religious leaders. Unfortunately, it may not be the medical professionals, the Ministry of Health, or UNICEF, or the World Health Organization, even though these are the sources that we would tend to trust. It would be really nice and scientifically neat to think that people make health decisions on a well-informed or a rational basis, but often they don't. Their decisions to adopt or not to adopt a specific behavior, such as having their children vaccinated, may have much more to do with economics or their values than with health. Especially in societies with high poverty and low literacy rates, we need to discover which communication channels are going to work. Most definitions of C4D stress consultation and dialogue. For example, in 1997, the UN General Assembly adopted this one. That statement from the UN is a pretty idealistic one, and those of us who've worked with UN agencies know that while they may proclaim how much they value community participation in their public statements, in practice many decisions are made by governments, by donors, or by managers. But the definition does show how views of C4D have evolved over the last half-century. In 2006, the World Congress on Communication for Development went further in what was called its Rome Consensus. Let's focus on two parts of this definition. First, note that it does not mention TV or mobile phones or advertising campaigns or indeed any technology at all. Instead, it calls for a broad range of tools and methods. These would include interpersonal and group communication. Secondly, C4D is not public relations or corporate communication. That's a common misunderstanding, even among communication specialists. Corporate or external communication is about making sure that an organization speaks with a consistent voice in projecting its vision and mission to various audiences. It's about the brand, how the organization is viewed, and communication efforts are directed to external audiences through public relations, press coverage, marketing, and lobbying. C4D is also not internal communication. That's the flow of information within an organization. External communication, internal communication, and C4D all require similar skill sets in research, analysis, speaking, writing, visual design. But their purposes are completely different. External communication enhances the profile of an organization. Internal communication helps to make an organization work more efficiently.